With 54 cars across 11 brands, the sun shining and the cars making their way out onto the circuit, where better to be than Monza. Welcome to the first Endurance Cup round of the Blancpain GT Series for 2018. Free practice getting underway. David Addison and John Watson trackside, and an entry, John, that is just mind-blowing this year, and this is going to be a stunning race tomorrow afternoon.
What can you say? I mean, the place looks fantastic. The entry is fantastic. The evolution of our GT3 products is even more fantastic. There are some really, well, I have to say, technically very clever and advanced cars in the 2018 field. Just wait until you see the second generation Bentley GT3, the Continental GT3. Looks so aggressive. Everything about the car just says, we're just going to destroy the opposition. Wait and see what happens, but it looks like that's what they're there to do.
Think back all those seasons to when we saw the original car. There is the new one. That's the second generation Bentley. The first one, here in the shadow of the mountains, always looked enormous, and yet it was a very purposeful, very successful race car. But this one looks lower, as you say, more aggressive. It looks every bit the GT race car.
And not only is it aggressive from the outside, the second generation Bentley, the Continental, this is the GT3 version, engineering-wise, it is much more directed towards what I would call a car that is much more easily adapted to GT3 racing. The original, the Continental GT3, was a car that was fundamentally a very sophisticated, a beautiful road car adapted to racing. This car has had a lot more motor racing influence in its design, and they're expecting great things from it. I mean, just look at it. I mean, the rear wing in that thing, you could have a picnic for six sitting around it.
Andy Soucek at the wheel of number 8 Bentley that you're looking at, and we'll see how well this car goes come qualifying. Many of them really first time out in anger. We did have some testing yesterday, plus the bronze test for the less experienced drivers. But for many of the pros, they've gone through all the admin checks on Friday, and finally they can get behind the wheel. So purple sectors means it's the best of anybody, green means it's a personal best. We'll start piecing together laps, but it's not necessarily about times. For some, it's about learning a new car, learning a new circuit, learning a new tyre, learning a new discipline. Some single-seater guns moving to GT racing. And as ever, you've got this great battle of the brands: Audi, Mercedes, Bentley, Ferrari, Lexus, new this year, Lamborghini, BMW, Jaguar, Aston Martin, Porsche and McLaren, all represented.
And just on the subject of Towers Pirelli, who are the tyre supplier, past the second sector for Soucek as well, Pirelli have brought their new P0 DHD2 type tyre, primarily not dissimilar, probably almost identical in fact to the tyre that Pirelli brought to the first of the sprint rounds in Zolder 2 weekends ago. A rear tyre that's designed to give a little bit more stability and give, Andy Soucek, that was going to be very tight. The BMW probably not aware that Soucek is on a charge, currently quickest car on circuit. Interesting to see what his opening flying lap will be in terms of times. What's going to be a 150.6. Compare that to a low 148 that we saw Friday afternoon. But for your first flying lap, and he probably lost time in parabolic. He had to get out of the throttle to let the BMW wake up and realize, I'm coming through. So that might have been a 49, maybe even a high 48.
That BMW was Henry Valkenhorst at the wheel of it, and it was Rui Aguas behind who had to try and dodge around him. Now, confirmation at the end of the lap, timing screen's updated, not Andy Soucek, but Maxime Soulet, who is behind the wheel of 8. So Maxime Soulet now confirmed as the driver. The timing beam registers as they leave the pit lane, but it's updated itself at the end of that lap.
They're saying Stephen Kane's in number 7, but it's showing that's Guy Smith, so whether the transponders have not been tripped over, we don't know, but there is the sister car to the number 8. Guy Smith is apparently behind the wheel, and I mean, I just think this car looks, I mean, it is physically a large car, but we know that the Bentley was always very light on its tires, very light on its feet, and this is an even more purposeful Bentley from Crew and M Sport, of course, who've developed the car. And look at the rear, the flares on those rear guards. I mean, it is a large car, but a very efficient one.
And very quick. So Stephen Kane in number 7, his opening salvo was a 150.9. Fastest at the moment is 24, which is the Mansillhaug Writer Youngstars Lamborghini, a 149.4, which is a demon lap. And second fastest currently number 76, the R Motorsport, Mathieu Vazivière, Jake Dennis, Nicky Team, Aston Martin. That then changes again, because now to the very top of the times goes the Michael Grenier driven Emil Frey Jaguar. That then changes again, because R Motorsports Marvin Kirchhofer puts the Aston Martin at the top by 0.2 of a second.
I mean, literally, it's going to be by the car as they come across start-finish line. Probably on the freshest of the tires they've had from running on Friday in track conditions, which are probably about as ideal as they will be throughout the day as we go into the afternoon session late on Saturday afternoon. Of course, qualifying will take place on Sunday morning, even earlier than we are on track right now. So these times will be more representative, I would imagine, of qualifying than the second session later in the day will be. But of course, the race itself starts 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon, so all it does is add to confusion, and not least of all, oh, what is that? Now, I reckon is that the Bratislava? Sorry, it's the Bratislava Mercedes behind. What is that number? What is that, David?
It looks like a sort of German highlighter pen, doesn't it? It's the Manthey Racing, very distinctive. Wait for the big cheer from John. Porsche. Oh, you've let me down. And it's a quick car. 911, what else would you number it? It is Fred Makovici, Romain Dumas and Dirk Werner.
And Fred Makovici with the permanent smile and the immaculate teeth behind the wheel right now. Of course, a factory contracted driver. This is all but, in terms of every other sense, a factory car run by the Manthey Racing team. But it's a Porsche with the engine behind the gearbox, not ahead of the gearbox. That's used exclusively by the factory in other series around the world.
And it is good, because we keep going on about this, to have a proper Porsche effort. We had privateer cars last year, but this is very definitely one of those in the Pro Cup. The overall situation, therefore, and it is going to be one to watch over the course of the weekend. It's not yet done a proper lap time, because it was a bit late out into the session.
Dominic Schweiger's gone quickest.
Yeah.
Pro-Am Cup.
And we're into the 48s now, 1:48.931. So it's the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari. There it is, heading down towards the Parabolica. It is Dominic Schwager as the star in that car, Alexander Matschul and Renat Salikov, the two drivers. So it will be Schwager who is always going to be the fastest. So when he's behind the wheel, you can expect the car to be at a slightly differing pace, but it's a good effort, that. We know that Ferrari always goes well around here, as also does Lamborghini. Circuits suited to the Italian cars.
Indeed, and I mean, I know we're going to talk about it probably more in qualifying, but there have been some regulation changes regarding qualifying, and it's across all the categories, and it's now going to be an amalgamation of the times of each of the three drivers. Or, David, as you explained to me, where there's two drivers, the AM will do 2 of the 3 sessions.
Right.
So, as we saw here at Monza 1 year ago, where the car on pole position, a time set by the pro driver with the gentleman driver who actually took the start. So, a small improvement, we believe, in terms of making the grid maybe less potentially, I don't even know which word to use now, because I could talk myself into trouble on this.
The one that was in my mind was hazardous, but that might be too strong a word. What it does mean is that you don't have drivers starting out of their comfort zone, as in an AM relying on a pro's time. So what it should do is give the grid a slightly more normal look, in a sense, given who will be starting the car. How it's going to fare and affect people's race strategies, we will see as you look at the 25 Audi, which is part of Santaloc's team, Antoine Young, Simon Gachet and the ubiquitous Christopher Haase in that car. I expect Haase to be the gun. So this session, just to make the point, doesn't affect the grid. We get 90 minutes of free practice now. We get 90 minutes of pre-qualifying at the end of the day. And then it's the 3-part 1 hour split for qualifying tomorrow morning. So this is where you can either go for a time, learn the track, cycle through a strategy, practice pit stops, work on the tyres, whatever you need to do, John.
Yeah, Christopher Haase in the 25 Audi. Another effectively Audi centrally contracted driver gets placed in one of the Audi teams, and Christopher Haase currently 24th quickest from his previous lap. One would assume this will see a further improvement, as Christopher Haase, we know from previous seasons in Blancpain, is one of those Audi drivers who is capable and has done so in the past 1 events.
Spa 24-hour winner, you name it, he's been there, done it, got the t-shirt. And this session then has had its effectively first 10 minutes completed. And already we've got 1 or 2 heading back into the pit lane, cycling through. So you're looking at the Audi, as John was saying, Christopher Haase is currently 26th fastest. Comes now down towards the Parabolica, number 25 then, the car that will run in Pro-Am. and he accelerates now up towards the timing line, and in fact will take the line at pit in. So Monza, one of those circuits where the start and finish different places. Timing line, the finish line is there, coming out of the parabolica. The start line is pretty much near pit out. So that's why you managed to stretch the whole grid onto the pit straight. Means inevitably that the first chicane is a pinch point. Over the line goes the Rover Racing BMW. There's two of them, Jens Klingman, Ricky Collard and Jesse Krohn drive 98. 99, the sister car is Marco Wittmann, Nick Katzberg and Alexander Sims. Two cars rich in driver talent. 99 you're looking at, and this therefore is the Nick Katzberg driven car.
Interesting, Ricky Collard competing now permanently in Blancpain Endurance in this row racing BMW. Of course, Alexander Sim in the sister car, no doubt will he be giving Ricky Collard any advice, or does Ricky not really need any advice these days?
I think Ricky has developed a lot, but Alexander Sims has two hats to wear in a sense. One is that he's an experienced driver of that car within that team, but also he has a BLDC hat to wear, which is that he's the ambassador for Tim Harvey's Superstars program. Ricky Collard is a rising star, and therefore with the club league, I'm sure he's giving advice as well.
Yep.
Ricky's a pretty confident young guy.
Sure is.
He's never raced here before, so anything he can learn from Alexander Sims, I'm sure he would take on board.
Yep.
Second generation circuit racer, third generation racer, Ricky Collard, because of course Dad Rob, a touring car racer, and his late grandfather Mick Duffy Collard, a real legend of hot rod racing, sadly passed away 2 years ago. There's Nick Katzberg, Spa 24-hour winner of seasons past, and pushing on now.
So the M6, and this is soon to be superseded by.
Yes.
I'm not sure what it's going to be. Is it an M4?
There's an M4 GT4 car, which they might start to think about for GT3 trim as well.
I mean,
there's
this
an
car,
M8 as well.
The M6 clearly, as we've seen in Spa, great 24-hour car. Just metronomically went round and round and round. Didn't have any problems. Clean pit stops, no shunts, no unnecessary damage. Katzberg comes across. Well, 24th is a long, long way from the true potential of both driver and of the car.
True enough. So that car with more to do. We've got a couple of improvements. Now one of them is from 43, a Straka Racing Mercedes, which must be a favourite. Maxi Buch, Maxi Goetz and Alvaro Perrin. I mean, that is just an awesome lineup.
But it's almost like shock horror. Alvaro Perrin, not in a McLaren.
Absolutely.
And I did ask that question this morning to a member of the McLaren operation, and essentially there have been some changes within the McLaren family, and that's not to go into right now, but Alvaro found himself basically surplus to requirements.
Amazing, isn't it?
I mean, unbelievable, a guy of that talent and ability. As we look at the Lexus into NISMO 1, we saw this car in Zolder a few weekends ago, 2 weekends ago. Still very much a car that is in development, and at Zolder it wasn't anywhere near the potential of the car, and also the nature of Zolder is a much slower, tighter circuit. So they're looking to do something a little bit better in conjunction with still running the Jaguar. The Jaguar that just got basically better and better in 2017 as the season progressed. So Emil Frey, Jaguar Racing, Alex Fontana, Adrian Zaug in a Jaguar. I mean, we're familiar with him in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, but the Jaguar.
Yeah.
So Adrian Zaug is no slouch.
When you look at this,
here's the Jaguar coming down.
You look at this entry and you think, oh, I know what car that is, but you get tricked, as you say, by drivers moving from car to car. Now there is the new Lexus, which is another of the brave Emil Frey racing projects. They've had a go with the Jaguar, and that's still on the grid. Last year they were talking about the Lexus. Here it is, it's delivered, and it's a new project. But the good news is that this is a team that gets ever more professional season after season.
Yes, I mean, as I'm just referring to the Lexus, very early in its development, and undoubtedly there will be influence coming from Japan because they race Lexus in a GT500 out there, but that's more of a silhouette car than a GT3 car. But there is a kind of a carryover. I know, for example, within the Evolution Nissan GT-R, some of the suspension components are similar to those that are used in Super GT 500 in Japan. So undoubtedly Lexus will be a beneficiary of that development further down the road.
Now this Mercedes that you're looking at, 87, is from the ASP squad. It's Jean-Luc Bobelic, Mauro Ricci and Nicolo Jamin. Again, it's a Pro-Am car. And the Mercedes, a bit like the BMW, a bit like the Bentley, all of that grunt. And it's a good endurance car. So, yes, you can focus on lap times and look at where cars are in the order, but of course it's at the end of 3 hours that we need to look at. And this circuit as well, I mean, what about tyres and tyre wear, John? Is it hard on tyres?
Not necessarily. I mean, obviously you've got big braking zones and therefore you've got major acceleration zones, so you put a lot of load into the tyre, but it's not what I would call an aggressive circuit. But just looking at the 87, this is the Pro-Am car within the ASP. We have been rejoined by a friend of GT Racing, Blancpain amongst others. Chris Buncombe is joining the Straka team. Chris had raced about 4 or 5 years ago, then he's had a bit of time off, and now back in one of these cars. But the point I'm going to get to is, when he got into the Mercedes AMG GT3 for the first time, he said it was just unbelievable. The car is so compatible to a driver. It really does help the driver rather than some cars where you're almost having to deal with a battle to get something out of it. He's over the moon.
Fantastic. And it's good to have him back. I mean, he's a Le Mans class winner, and it's wrong, really, that he's been on the sidelines these last few years and has been pretty magnanimous about it. I mean, he's been at Blancpain for the last season, 2 seasons, working with his brother, working with Alex, and being a PA almost, if you like, and looking after the off-track side, but itching to get back behind the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, Chris has been probably more synonymous with his friendship, as is the case of Alex as well. The Froome boys from Somerset, you know, the Somerset gang, of which Jenson Button is probably the leader of all that group, and they are all mates, and they all, you know, party or whatever they do together. And Chris has been, you know, you look at an Instagram post with Jenson, there's Chris. So now Chris has got a proper job back in motor racing, and really looking forward to finding out the skills that he obviously exists. It's in the genes in the Buncombe family. Because both Dad and Grandpa used to race. 82 has got Phil Keane behind the wheel of it. You're looking at the Lamborghini. Phil, finally perhaps, will get a chance to show on a global stage what he's capable of. He's in one of the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghinis with Rolf Nyken and also in that car from Carreras, so it's another good Pro-Am car. But Phil Keane, whether you put him in a modern GT car like one of these in the British Championship with John Minshaw, or in historics, Lola T70s, Jaguar E-types, he is a very, very accomplished driver. And oddly, is one of those Brits that's just not fashionable. There are some British drivers that get a huge amount of coverage and credit. Phil Keane, a bit like, sadly, the late Sean Edwards never really got the credit he deserved. Phil falls into that category. But he is a very, very talented driver, and hopefully, if he's doing a full season of Blancpain, will be able to show more people just what he's capable of. Well, we know when somebody's kicked up the dust big time coming out of Ascari, and I don't know which car that was, but there was the blue Lamborghini or the Mercedes coming back on track. So that was a moment that, was that the 87, the Bienvenido car or not? But certainly being in a Grasser Racing entered Lamborghini Huracan, you've got a car that is a proven winning car, so the platform is perfect for Phil Keane to go on and just show what he's capable of. But another car, it's another Lamborghini, it's one of the Barwell Motorsport entries, number 78 car, has got a young Scottish driver. David, you're probably familiar with him, and he did it must be in the pro section or during the running yesterday. Sandy Mitchell anyway was quickest in the session that he was running in. Just looking, I'll get to Sandy in a second, that was the Mercedes running wide out of Variante Ascari, no real harm done, just running wide. Yeah, Sandy Mitchell came from the BRDC F4 Championship a few years back with some Mercury Cost backing, and then into GT4 in the British Championship, and is yet another of these very, very talented young drivers. But again, what you notice is that you start off in single-seaters, and within 2 or 3 seasons you've moved away from that branch of the sport into GT racing. I think one of the difficulties of single-seater racing is because it is essentially one-make racing, maybe the appeal, the broader appeal, has begun to wane, whereas looking at GT racing as an example, you can see the brands, and in effect you can go to your local Mercedes or Jaguar or Aston Martin coming through the second chicane, the Roggier chicane. These are cars that fundamentally you can go and buy, and that's your daily drive. But also from a driver's point of view, you could spend
lots of seasons spending money in single-seater racing not to get to Formula One. In GT racing, you could be being paid to be a driver and earn a living a different way.
Well, to me, if you're a professional driver, a part of that is that you should be paid for that job. It's not quite as simple as that these days, but there are a number of drivers who make an extremely good living. I mean, particularly if you're part of the Mercedes, the Audi, the BMW, the Bentley, whatever else, and even the Porsche, the Mante Porsche. So these are professional drivers paid by the companies that they work for, and then they get placed into a variety of quasi-factory teams.
I mean, you do have, for example, at the moment, an example of a driver that gets dropped into cars, different championships, different weekends, Alessandro Pierguidi, his car topping the times with Michael Broniszewski. Now, this I would have thought is going to be a potential winning car. Pro-Am has never won outright, but this could be it, because Broniszewski is a very good AM, and as we know, Alessandro Pierguidi is a very, very quick pro. There is 33, the ARC Bratislava Mercedes of the redoubtable Miro Konopka, Andrei Lewandowski, who was a very, very quick driver last year in the AM Cup of Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and the third driver is the Chinese former single-seater racer Kang Ling. Miro Konopka is an inveterate enthusiast. He's been in GT racing for certainly 2 decades, if not longer, and has raced at Le Mans. You name it, he's done it. He never had a huge amount of success, but he is exactly what you should have in the paddock and on the grid. He's a great enthusiast.
Interestingly, during the bronze test late Friday, sort of early evening almost, I actually sat in the tribunes facing the pits. I never do that. I mean, it's like going out on the racetrack. I always like to watch on screen. But something about that, the Bratislava entered, it had a different, to me, slightly different rasp off the exhaust. It might have just been, I don't know, I can't imagine what it was.
Yeah.
But it looked to be quick in a straight line. I don't know if it was any quicker than any of the others, but the sound and the visual, maybe the colour of the car just makes it look fast.
And Konopka, having said he's an enthusiast, he's also doing the 2 Lamborghini Super Trofeo races. So the truck is full of cars and parts.
He is an enthusiast.
He's definitely an enthusiast, and he's not the youngest driver. His son races as well now, Mato Konopka. So we have at the moment fastest Michael Broniszewski. You're looking at number 1 Audi, which again lacks nothing in driver talent. Dries Van Thor, Christopher Mies, and former Formula Renault racer Alex Riveras, former Porsche racer as well, Alex Riveras. He raced in the German Carrera Cup, Porsche Super Cup. So Alex Riveras moving now to Audis, and Vincent Voss's team again with this excellent driver lineup.
Just on the subject of top speeds going into the first chicane, I don't know whether I should say this unsurprisingly, but the 2 fastest cars were the 2 Grasser Racing Lamborghini Huracans. Frank Pereira, 283 kilometers per hour. Mirko Bortolotti, 281. Now, why there's a difference between the 2 cars might be a small amount of difference in the aero. Maybe Frank Pereira got a mega toe down into turn 1, I don't know. But the 2 Lamborghinis, significantly quicker in reality than much of the rest of them. Now, I'm talking about maybe 2 or 3 kilometers per hour, but if you've got a car that's quick in a lap and has got great straight line speed, you're pretty much in a very good position.
Well, number 1 Audi, you would think ought to be, as they say, there or thereabouts. Christopher Mies is 33rd fastest. He's just come across the timing line. Now, 33rd makes you think, gosh, that's a slow car. He's only 1.6 seconds away from the top time, but there's a huge amount of the field to cram in, and we're talking fractions of a second here. It's 98 thousandths between the top 2. It's 37 thousandths between second and third. And if you go down to 6th and 7th, it is 1,000th of a second splitting those 2 cars.
I was told something this morning by a team owner who shall remain nameless because Mark Lemmer said don't tell anybody, and that's Barwell Motorsport. But actually they didn't run the bronze test or the last session on Friday because they're into tyre conservation, tyre saving.
Okay.
And I just wonder, when you're looking at a time, where is it, Christopher Mies down in 33rd, that is not a representative time. It is a time they're setting on a set of Pirelli tyres that's probably done a number of laps. They're probably doing the very same thing. They're saving tyres ultimately for when it matters, which may be in the session later this afternoon, but clearly for qualifying, and then obviously for the 3-hour race.
Yeah, we'll see how many laps they do. Teams, as I said earlier, working to a plan. 43 Mercedes. This is Maxi Götz in the Stracker Racing Mercedes. Of course, Stracker defecting from McLaren to Mercedes for this year. There it is. It's a proper AMG effort, of course, and wriggling out of the chicane now onto this very fast straight down towards the parabolica. Speed building all the time now.
Yes, great corner. The Ascari is what all chicanes, in my opinion, should be. It's a quick entry, it's a very quick change of direction to the right, and then there's the exit that really is the sweet bit of that old three-corner complex. And before you know it, you're into parabolica, one of the classic corners, one of the, well, virtually the only corner that is as it pretty much was, albeit on the outside you've now got tarmac and runoff. But this historic Monza Autodromo in the Royal Park at Monza, if you want to go old school, this is as close to that old school as you get.
It was the scene for the very first ever, as that was called, Blancpain Endurance Series race. It's the spiritual home of the opening round of the championship. Michael Bronizeski is the fastest, and in has come the Manthey Porsche, which has done what? 20th fastest. Fred Makovici has got that car, and it's going to go to the garage for a moment.
Interesting to see, because it's a sort of a single entry, and we don't often get to see the Manthey team. They came last year to Spa. We don't get to see them, in my view, often enough. Hopefully we're going to see them throughout the Blancpain Endurance Championship, 5 rounds, 4 after Monza. So I would expect to see that car, when it gets down to qualifying, to be where it would normally associate itself. That's close to the front as you can get. Nice colour, that, isn't it?
The Black Falcon car.
Yeah, Black Falcon car.
Just going back to Manthey for a moment, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, John, but is that a project where Manthey say to Porsche, right, we'd like to go and do Blancpain, or does Porsche come along and say, we want representation in Blancpain, and you're going to run a car? Is it driven by the brand rather than by the team?
I would think it would be, it is actually both, but in reality, if Porsche didn't give it its blessing, in my opinion, then I don't think that Olaf Manthey would probably on his own go out and run a car. It's not an inexpensive thing to do. You can imagine the commitment, preparation, whatever else goes into it. It's a commitment. So I would assume that it's with the blessing and maybe more than just technical assistance from the Stuttgart manufacturer.
A bit like Spa, where Porsche said, and indeed Sepang 12 Hours one year, Porsche said, right, we'd like to win that race. So Olaf Manthey, yes, you can go do the job for us. There is Nicolas Jamin at the wheel of the... Well, he's not at the wheel of it, apologies, because it's Jean-Luc Beaumoulin. For some reason, the drivers' names on the graphics are off a entry list. They're not being linked to the transponder in the car, curiously. So it is Jean-Luc Beaumoulin, and therefore 8th fastest, because he's definitely an AM, is pretty decent, 4th in class at the moment, that car.
So we haven't yet seen, to my knowledge, the 63 Lamborghini of Mirko Bortolotti. It may have been out, maybe I'm not. Are we on the top page? Where's the 63?
It's not within the top 40.
No, so maybe they're just, they know what they've got. Again, I'm assuming they're running when they need to and not doing an awful lot until that's the time.
So at the moment, as you look at 27, which is the Lazarus Racing Lamborghini, Giuseppe Cipriani, Miguel Ramos, Fabrizio Crestani at the wheel. That car is to be found, he says hesitantly, outside the 40th, Cipriani at the wheel, Giuseppe Cipriani.
Now there's something I love to see, an overtake.
Yeah.
Even though this is only practice, but you know, it's becoming an endangered part of motorsport. And one of the benefits of Monza into Parabolica, one of the number of places where you can make a clean overtake, assuming you don't get this aggressive type of defense, which is something that has, sadly, I have to say, come from some of the junior single-seater formulas. But that was a clean overtake, and I hope you're going to see lots of that come Sunday.
Ferrari, Mercedes, Audi, all in the shot. That's the fastest car in the session, Michael Bronizeski. Now, if he can do this, imagine what Pierre Guidi can do.
Well, I would assume, without being disrespectful to Bronizeski, that it'll be at least a second quicker. Ferrari have always been quick at Monza, and in a way, you'd be disappointed if Ferrari weren't quick at Monza. We had a Ferrari in pole position last year, and that was Alessandro Pierguidi who put it on pole position. Of course, the race somewhat messed up by a multi-car collision before we got to turn 1.
Which indeed is one of the reasons why this new qualifying format is brought into play. But the 488 GT3 then, Michael Bronizeski at the wheel. And again, because Pierre Guidi is the gun for hire, he's expected to be able to deliver. So you give as much of this session as you can to the AM. Even though Bronizeski is a former Blancpain Pro-Am champion, he's an accomplished race winner in this and in Sports Club. He's raced in the Ferrari Challenge. He's done a lot of miles in a relatively short space of time. He is still, because largely as the AM he funds this, being given as much track time as possible.
Indeed, and I mean, just watching coming through the chicane, I mean, when you say an AM, you always assume that the AM driver is significantly at a significantly lower level. Yeah. But in the case of Bronizeski, that is not the case. He's learned over the previous years, and I mean, just watching there coming through Parabolica, he's going to make his way into the pit lane. I mean, that's like a pro driving the car. I mean, you're not, everything that you're seeing there is what a pro driver, the whole approach, as we look into the Nissan pits, Matt Parry, Alex Buncombe, Lucas Ordonez, so the 23 Nissan, still very, very early in its development phase. What they've done is they've got the engine way, way lower in the engine bay and much further back. And it is a significant technological step forward on the 22 car, which is the regular car, which is in the Pro-Am category.
So it's a better centre of gravity, it handles better. And Matt Parry was impressive here last year. Lucas Ordonez is going to be installed behind the wheel. It's a really nice team there. I mean, Bob Neville, who runs it, is a good, jolly character. And all the drivers he manages to get fall into that same ethos. You know, they don't walk around the garage as prima donnas with the drivers. Anybody that walks in, they're always smiling, handshake. It's just a really nice family feel in that team.
That's the word I would use. It's a family team. Bob and his wife Liz, it's their team in conjunction with NISMO or Nissan back in Japan. But it is very much a family team, and I think that the drivers are beneficiaries of that, because sometimes when you get a young driver coming into an uber professional team where everybody is almost so sharp, sometimes the younger guys find that very difficult to work in, whereas in the Nissan team it's a much more, say, family orientated team. And what they've got now, they've got two simulators sitting in the garage with the Monza circuit, so you can go, David, you can go. I don't race anymore, so I can avoid it. But I mean, it is, I watched it this morning, and it is very, very, a very accurate representation of the circuit we're at this weekend.
Now here's a car that went well in the opening sprint round at Zolder, Ezequiel Perez Compact, number 19. It's another of the Grasser fleet, so it's Compact, Raffaele Giammaria and Marco Mappelli, who was one of a number of drivers here who was on Blancpain GT Asia duty last weekend. Marco Mappelli went well. Where is this car to be found? Because it is 29th. Yeah, it's quite a long way down for the moment. But again, free practice. Don't read too much into it.
No, and I mean, I'm assuming that everybody using what they've got in terms of the rubber, they're not going to be throwing new tyres, for example, in this session, because this session is a practice session. It is not a qualifying session, and ultimately you want to keep as many sets of tyres as you will have available for qualifying and then for the race. And I mean, the gain, I gather, over a tyre that's done a certain number of laps over a new tyre has shifted slightly, because the previous tyre that was used 2017, and that was a new tyre for 17 and over 16, those tyres had a slightly more peaky edge to the performance, and then the tyre would then drop back into a more consistent performance, whereas the new tyre doesn't seem to have that sort of immediate new tyre feel in terms of a lap time. So teams are getting used to it, drivers are getting used to it. McLaren being slightly hung out to dry on the outside as they go through Parabolica, or actually its correct name, as I look at my map, is Biziano.
Alexander West in the McLaren. Garage 59 back onto the grid this year. This is the Alexander West, Chris Harris and Chris Goodwin car. Running in the same colours as Bob Neville's Nissan, of course, same oil company.
Yes, of course, Chris Goodwin is no longer directly associated to the McLaren team. He's moved over to Newport Pagnell, I think it is, where Aston Martin is based.
Right, yeah.
So new challenges for Chris, but he'll always be ever smiling and happy, and you know, just Chris.
is a great guy to have in an AM Cup car like this, because he can work with the less experienced drivers, and he's got good pace, but he's patient enough and knowledgeable and can sit there and help those drivers get more out of themselves and improve.
But the pace of the McLaren currently, you can see the two Ferraris, one ahead, one the 333 coming up alongside and overtaking the McLaren. Not quite as strong. Again, watching from the tribunes this car yesterday, the engine note from the McLaren much more muted than from the 488, both V8 twin turbo engines. And then look at the gap. I mean, okay, maybe some of that's just coming off the corner, but clearly Ferrari have got more where it counts in a straight line, and the 333 just getting up alongside the sister car down into turn one, under braking, big brake. They're coming 278 to 280 kilometers per hour, braking round about 150, maybe 140 meters before the chicane, down all the way down into second gear. Some even might go down into first gear. I mean, even in Zolder, around turns 12 and 13, I was surprised to see how many drivers were going down to first gear.
Now this is the Rinaldi racing car, which has had a driver change, so now it is Alexander Matschul at the wheel of it, who's gone well in the AM Cup in seasons past and was racing the VLN, for example. So Matschul comes now through the Lesmos, but it won't be as quick as when we had the Dominic Schwager time set early on.
The trackside microphone's picking up that sort of, with a twin turbo V8. It takes away the sort of almost the painful screech that the 458 Ferrari had, and it's a very much more muted note, but it is slightly more audible than McLaren are getting from their twin turbo. I think it's a 3.6 V8. Ferrari, of course, their V8 is 4.4 or 4.7, 4.4, I believe.
So Matschul down towards the Parabolica. The session has gone through the first third. We've got 52 minutes still to run, and Bronizeski is the fastest from now number 4 Mercedes. Mauro Engel credited with doing the time. Mauro Engel, Jelmer Berman, Lukas Stolz is another potential winning car. Yeah. I mean, you know, stick a pen in the entry and you find a potential winner, to be fair, because there are so many of them. Third fastest is this car, Alexander Matschul at the wheel of it, but it was Dominic Schwager's time. Fourth fastest, number 26, the Santalok Junior team car of Antoine Young, of Mark Rostan, I should say, Simon Gachet and Marcus Winkelhock. There it is, there's 26. It is Mark Rostan at the wheel at the moment.
Car I'm keeping an eye on, and we haven't yet really seen it much on camera, is the 62 Motorsport, and it's Alex Brundle, Marvin Kirchhofer and Maxime Martin in the V12 Vantage. And that could be a sleeper.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we know last year, Johnny Adam in the Oman Racing, I mean, a mega performance.
Yeah.
And that was a two-driver lineup with Aman Al-Alfi behind the wheel, again kicking up, coming out of the Ascari. So the Aston Martin, a car that has previously had great success and worked really well. So that car is currently 5th quickest, 0.2 of a second down on what is still the quickest time from the Ferrari of Bronizeski.
With Maxime Martin having done that time, now an Aston factory driver, having moved away from BMW and the DTM. Over the timing line is the Mark Rostan Audi. Just to clarify, Mark Rostan, Niels Stevenart and Marcus Winkelhock are the 3 drivers of that car. And Mark Rostan and Marcus Winkelhock have been around for a fair few years, so the fact that it's entered as Santalok Junior team suggests that somebody has a sense of humour in that squad. Team irony. There you can see the white line at pit out that you must not cross. Zolder, John, penalties flew, didn't they, for people cutting white lines, touching cones and things?
The biggest penalty of all was for Dries van Voor in Sunday's race. His car had 4 cones directly in front of it, and either he was not made aware of it or he hadn't seen it. He just drove straight through them, and of course he got that drive-through penalty, threw away a win. And those are errors which normally I would never expect to see from WRT. Yeah. Whether the error was from Dries van Voor or whether it was from the team not advising, as we look at the 62 Aston Martin, and that's a rather stealthy looking grey paint job with the blue flashes on the mirrors and around the traditional Aston Martin air intake.
Works well though, that livery, doesn't it?
It's the blue actually is what saves it. Otherwise, it would look like a bit of flying tarmac from the Newport Pagnell. You know, these colours look great in a photo shoot, but they just blend into tarmac so much that, but the blue does highlight it and does help it stand out.
Now we have a slow car out on the circuit. We are told, not told which, but there's a report on the timing screen that there is a slow car on track from turn 10, so we should be seeing it around about now. Blue flag wave there, not a white, so hopefully that car's got out of the way or even crawled into the pit in now.
I think I've discovered the reason why we saw the Lamborghini with a bit of damage in its front. There was a collision on track between that and the 33 ARC Bratislava Mercedes. There's a bit of notification come up just to maybe help us understand why the Lamborghini, the left front, had damage on it, and there was obviously contact with the ARC Bratislava Mercedes. Aston comes across the line. Any improvement in its time? Not on this lap, no. It howls because it's got a V12. There's not very many V12 engined cars any longer in the Blancpain, Aston Martin, Ferrari, of course, and Maserati in days before.
And make the most of this, because as more and more categories think about going electric, GT racing with these different shapes and sizes and sounds remains part of perhaps a dying breed. 888, the car collection racing Audi you're looking at, Dimitri Parhofer, Antonio Forne-Thomas and Frank Stippler. So, don't mean to be harsh, but it's a bit of a waste of Frank Stippler, isn't it, putting him into a car that's going to be down in Pro-Am, because he ought to be up there fighting for wins.
Indeed, but you know, there are a lot of amateurs and gentleman drivers out there who want to go competitive GT3 racing, and they choose the product, the Audi that they're racing, and the assistance that they get is they've got these drivers, factory contracted drivers who get placed into these teams. But obviously, in previous years, Frank Stippler would have been in one of the WRT Audi cars, which would have been a more likely overall race winner. But of course, this car has got the possibility of, just looking to see, well, it's
888.
Yes, a Pro-Am car, yeah. Pro-Am car. So it's got a chance to win its category, which is the objective of putting Frank Stippler behind the wheel.
And it is Forne-Thomas behind the wheel of it at the moment. That bit of contact between ARC Bratislava and the Lazarus Lambo that John was explaining about is now being investigated. So Greg Masters and Richard Aubrey, two of the three permanent stewards for the championship, are going to study the data and look at any pictures available and see if a penalty needs to apply. They're looking a bit nervous under braking. Is the number 8 Bentley?
It did. That was a bit of a twitch I didn't expect to see, because although there was a certain amount of bumps as you come up into the Ascari chicane, that was quite a deviation, and that would have been a little bit of a heart-stop moment for the number 8 Bentley, who currently is behind the wheel. Yes.
17th Andy Suchek.
Andy Suchek. Yeah. So unexpected to see it. Normally the Bentley is planted under braking, maybe just a little bit late in the brakes, but it looked like there's a snatch that drew the car bit to the centre of the circuit.
So there through again is Antonio Forne-Thomas, the Spanish driver, bronze graded driver, 28. Oman racing team with TF Sport, last year's Pro-Am winners here when it was Ahmad Al-Harthi with Johnny Adam. Well, this year it's Ahmad Al-Harthi, Ewan Mackay and Charlie Eastwood.
But you didn't say where Charlie Eastwood is from.
He'll be from Northern Ireland.
Belfast.
This doesn't look very promising, John.
No, that is an unexpected sight, and you're looking at an engine that is being removed, or that's the replacement to be placed. So that's a bad start.
Yeah.
Unexpected. You know, these things normally, these engines, you should be able to run in some cases almost the whole season.
Absolutely.
With the exception of Spa being a 24-hour race, which is a whole season in itself.
Just to go back to Charlie Eastwood, my learned friend is right to point out he's from Belfast. He's also the winner of last year's Carrera Cup GB. He'd spent 2 years as a Porsche scholar, having won the scholarship that got him the 2 seasons of funded drives within the British Porsche Championship. He won it on a tie break last year. Dino Zamparelli tied on points, but on drop scores, Charlie Eastwood got the nod. Charlie also did the fastest lap in the race at Le Mans last year. He had a puncture, so had to come back from that, and was very, very impressive, even though all the attention was on race winner Dan Cameron. Charlie Eastwood did a great job. And Ewan Mackay is also up from Carrera Cup GB. Now, this Porsche is the BES Motorsport car, Jürgen Hering, along with Edward Lewis Browner and Wolfgang Triller. It's a true AM Cup car, but that doesn't mean they're trying any less hard.
No, and on occasions when they've had a sort of pro or semi-pro driver, that car's been a very quick car, and also, one must point out, very distinctive. It does help. Wow, wow, what's all that about? Kept it going effectively in a straight line. Now that was a good bit of driving. Was that the 88 Mercedes or not? Could have been Raffaele. Actually, Raffaele in Marcello has got a massive hospitality tent towards the back of the... Couldn't believe it. Never seen a racing driver having hospitality specifically for his family and guests.
Race winner at Sepang last week, Raffaele Marciello, in the second Blancpain GT Asia race. So 49th it is, 991 over the timing line. Herring, Browner and Edward Lewis Browner is also doing the Blancpain GT Sports Club races. So he's an example of another driver who's here and maximising the amount of racing available for the weekend. And that's another nervous-looking car. Yeah, and that was the Mercedes again, just under braking, looked unstable, unexpected. Can't quite yet see the numbers of that car. Let's look and see. It is the 88. Unusual to see that car getting out of shape, particularly under braking, particularly coming down into the first chicane. Looks much better there. And it was 88 that was running wide, you're right. So that car, Daniel Juncadella is at the wheel of it.
Now, didn't Daniel Juncadella hurt himself recently? I thought he had damaged a collarbone or something.
Yes, he has. Yes.
So I wasn't even sure Daniel Juncadella would be here or not because of the collarbones, clavicles, I think it is. Painful injuries. So
it's going to hurt, isn't it?
Well, they've got power steering and they've got all kinds of air conditioning and whatever else in these cars. So the comfort level is the best that is possible. But nevertheless, you don't want to be carrying an injury in an endurance event.
No, indeed, especially when you're strapped so tightly into the car and being flung from side to side. It's going to hurt, isn't it? The other Mercedes driver in the walls a bit is Christian Vitoris, who had, with Mercedes' help, after a year out of racing, because he dropped from the DTM squad, they had put together a deal for him to drive at Straka, only for him to then get a form of glandular fever, so he can't race. So Lucas Auer takes over from Christian Vitoris at Straka, but it's another driver in the walls. Into the pits comes Juncadella.
Glandular fever is a funny illness. It used to be called nurse's disease or something, because of nursing staff in hospitals. And if your girlfriend was a nurse and you got glandular fever, it was always sort of useless information. I don't know what happened to Vitoris in that case, but that's a bit aggressive, unnecessarily so.
The question mark is how soon he gets over it, and how fit he will feel.
Takes time. It could be a couple of months because it really just drains your system, and your fitness levels all suffer. You can't really do you've got to just give your body the break to let the fever and whatever else goes with that to purge your system, get out of the system.
Now the number 90 Mercedes, just to talk about, Jules Szymkowiak, Jack Manchester and Nico Bastian. Nico was a winner in Sepang last week as well. Patrick Niederhauser won the first race. What you would have gathered was a very Mercedes-orientated weekend. That car 42nd, a long way down.
Yes, and I'm assuming that was Jules behind the wheel. Hard to tell, we don't have it on our screen currently, but certainly attacking the curve into turn one. I don't think it was Jack Manchester. He didn't drive like that in Zolder a couple of weeks ago. He drove very much more a conservative style of driving.
The car backs off there.
Yep.
Lets the Lamborghini go, lets the Mercedes go. The green black Falcon car of Abdulaziz, Hubert Haupt and Gabriele Piana. So the sunshine making Monza look quite splendid. Temperatures have been really high all weekend, so when you get to mid to late afternoon race time, it's going to be very hot inside those cars. Somebody's had a moment there. Look, there's a bit of debris lying in the gravel, dust settling.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a bit of bodywork. I thought it looked like a bit of rubber, but in fact, it's on the outside of NISMO 2.
A bit of diffuser or under trails, I think it may be.
McLaren slips. No, it doesn't. Can't quite get itself into position to make the move. So that's the 58 garage, 59 car, Ben Barnacle, Coleman Edgar, Andrew Watson. Andrew Watson, of course, driving in sprint in Zolder and a BMW M6, and you know, so what's the difference? And I mean, it's like, I mean, effectively, maybe in terms of lap time, it's not a big difference, but in terms of how you get that, probably like night and day.
What's going on at McLaren? Because there are fewer cars on this grid, and perhaps not thought about as a likely overall winner in the same way that, you know, for example, the Ledegaard, Bell, Van Gisbergen entry was a couple of seasons back. Is this part of that cyclical nature of GT3? Some brands are better some years than others, or is this all part of the changes back at Woking?
I think there are changes within the company, within the brand. So it's in a transitional phase, I would say. And I think ultimately what McLaren would be looking to do is to develop the 720, the sort of the top of the range of the McLaren product lineup as the next phase of GT3 development. So the 650, which is the current car we have at Monza, is probably going to be superseded, whether it will be this year or in 2019, by the MP4 790, whatever the designation it gives, which is a significantly different car aerodynamically, with more horsepower. As we once again, 43 just nips in the inside of the McLaren, and not really looking down the top 40, seeing an awful lot of movement. What is notable that the top 20 is almost dominated by Pro-Am cars rather than out-and-out Pro cars. Yeah. So to me, we're cycling through all the non-Pro drivers in the Pro-Am cars to give them as much track time as possible, and the Pro drivers in those Pro-Am cars are probably sitting it out, but the Pro cars themselves, most of them or a number of them have not even bothered or so far been seen on track. 37 minutes, there's 1.5 hour session remaining. There has been a little bit of a change. No, it's not. It's number 11. It's Alessandro Pierguidi behind the wheel. Yeah, just picked it up. So his last lap, Pierguidi's last lap was 149.8 against the best lap that car did, which was on lap 3 of a 148.6. Again, probably a function of rubber that's seen its best days, and Alessandro Pierguidi may have just stepped into the number 11 Ferrari.
Bearing in mind that Monza is 5.7 kilometres long, the fact that we have 22 cars all within a second, I think is pretty impressive.
I hope it gets even closer.
It can, because
you're going to see the 63 Grasso racing car of Mirko Bortolotti, which we haven't seen so far. Fred Makovic, for example, in the 911 Porsche, currently in 20th place. I would assume that car will leapfrog up. Maximilian Buch, you know, in Mercedes with Maxi Götz back together again. Yeah. But after 2 years of being separated by DTM, so that's a car that will always, you would go to the grid and expect to see it in the front 3 rows of the grid.
That little bit of contact we talked about earlier on, Giuseppe Cipriani, well, he is now, along with the team manager, going to see the stewards at the end of the session. So I fear that Cipriani may have a case to answer.
Yeah, it looks like he maybe was being a little bit aspirational, maybe the back of the Bratislava Mercedes. Certainly their front was the damage on that particular car. Number 27, there's the sister car, 28.
What's it? 28 is Arno Centomato, Miguel Ramos, and
Crestini.
Fabio Crestini, Crestani. He was a quick driver.
Yeah. The trouble is, there are a lot of really quick drivers out there.
I was talking to a driver about this on the way out, waiting for our delayed flight, and saying, on the one hand, if you do well in this championship, because there are so many in it, you can suddenly really escalate your career. You can look a star. But if you are a young driver in Pro-Am and your Am ain't that quick, you can sink without trace, and people just forget you're there. So it is actually quite a pressure point for your career. You've got to do well.
Well, to me, the most important thing is if you're a racing driver and you get an opportunity to race, you take it. Albeit that it might be in a car that isn't a car that's going to win overall, but you might have a chance to win your category. To me, if you're a racing driver, you get the chance, race. You know, that's what I did. And then from that, if people see that you're doing a strong job in your individual stints, that will be noted. Of course, on the other hand, if you have significant backing, that makes that progress an awful lot easier.
Now their 54 is the Emil Frey Jaguar. This is the now Alex Fontana, Adrian Zaug and Mick Grenier, Carl Grenier. Carl Grenier was the winner of the Lamborghini Super Trofeo last year out of the combination of him and Laura Spinelli. They won the championship together. Adrian Tombe going through just up the road ahead in the Mercedes. The Lumirat display giving you his name rather than the position in class. It should.
Adrian Tombe, another evacuee from DTM.
Yeah, the list of ex-DTM racers is growing all the time, sadly.
And of course, Adrian has had the benefit of his dad, Patrick, who's supported his career, but inevitably, you know, how much more
Can only go so far.
gas is in the tank to keep supporting the number one son.
Tombe, presumably, even though he's in a Mercedes, ought to be smiled upon by the fans here, seeing that Dad did drive for Ferrari in Formula 1.
He did, and he had success.
Indeed.
There's the 23, there is the Evolution Nissan. Visually, doesn't look a lot different. It's only when you look under the bonnet and check out round, really got to get underneath the car and see if the major, I mean, this car is still very much underdeveloped and will pick up and improve. So, top speeds were fractionally down on where they were 1 year ago. I don't think that's the criteria that the car will be judged by. It's just, you know, three drivers learning a car that is quite a lot different and knowing the steps to take to find that time.
Alex Buncombe at the wheel of it, 25th currently that car, and lacking straight line speed. He was saying to me this morning about 12 kilometres an hour down on the fastest straights compared to last year's car, and that's a lot to give away.
Yes, of course. I mean, every car here is governed by balance of performance, and you know, product that is effectively new to the 2018 season. There's a period of settlement or adjustment, and eventually these balance of performance changes. They can be, you know, altered over the weekend, whether it's aerodynamically, whether it's, you know, more air or less air getting into the engine. So what maybe happened on Friday may not be what will happen today or even tomorrow.
Lexus turns through, one of these 11 brands. Alex Buncombe then, 25th, quickest. And no doubt, the team will, at the end of the session, go and talk to Claude Sermont, who is SRO's technical director. He's the man with the unenviable task of working out the BOP and saying, look, this is what we were last year, this is what we are now, this is the top speed that we're doing. You can look at the data and see that we're not sandbagging.
The one thing that Nissan always had was mega straight line speed. And that, the engine, and it is an engine, it's not a power unit, it's a proper internal combustion engine.
How terribly old-fashioned, yes.
I'll have it every day of the week. And I mean, it is an outstanding power unit. Oh dear. Well, that's not the ideal way to go through the Ascari chicane.
It's number 5. Saud Al Faisal at the wheel. Ignore the caption, it's wrong again. It's Saud Al Faisal at the wheel. Has he got a puncture?
Don't know, but certainly he's got well off the line to get everybody come out of the Ascari chicane and not impede them. Not a nice place to get it's a reasonably quick turn in. Well, I'm talking about 80, maybe 85 miles an hour.
It's a great place to sit and watch. It's a very, very high-speed part of the circuit diving into that chicane. 961 there, the spirit of race Ferrari, Alex de Mergian, Lorenzo Bontempelli, and Giancarlo Fisichella. Right down at the bottom of the entry, car number 961. He's in Pro-Am this year. But again, that's a car that when you put Fisichella behind the wheel, will just come alive.
Yes, I mean, this is a car that is potential pole position car under what we ran last year. Less likelihood under the new qualifying regulations this year, but individual lap times, you'd still have to say that Giancarlo Fisichella has still got it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Into the Parabolica he comes then, or the car comes. Clock ticking on down. Remember, the best of the session is a 48.6. It's going to go to the pits.
Yeah, you can see him. He was not using the racetrack as he got to just beyond the apex of the Parabolica, so that was an indication that this particular run is going to conclude. So we're still Well, the fastest car is a Ferrari still with Broniszewski's time, 1:48.6, less than a tenth of a second away is the number 4 Mercedes. So, was it Jelmer Berman? Jelmer Berman is that second quickest time.
Bentley in the background, Stuart Parker's team car, Team Parker Racing, which comes into the championship this year for Derek Pearce, Rob Smith and Seb Morris. Seb, who has been winning British GT last year. 72 Ferrari just up ahead is the SMP Racing entry of Michael Alyoshin, Miguel Molina and David Rigon. And that should be there or thereabouts.
Absolutely.
It ran well here last year.
Absolutely, David Rigon. And again, one of those Ferrari drivers who just knows what he needs to do. But, you know, lap time after lap time, he's got to be a Ferrari driver that's going to be in the leading group of the pros in these Pro-Am Ferraris.
So Rigon one to watch as back into the session is 911, Dirk Werner at the wheel of the Manthey Porsche.
Just watching the Parker Racing Bentley and Sebastian Morris, Seb Morris. How big a step up do you think it is for Seb Morris to come out of British GT, which he won last year, into Blancpain Endurance? I mean, obviously, a lot more cars at this particular event.
He's a lot more competitive. He knows the car and he knows the circuit because he's raced here in Formula Renault, for example, a GP3. And Seb is a confident guy, but it will take a while, I think, to learn 2 new co-drivers. He knows the team, so it is certainly a step up, but he is being relied on to be the quick driver in that car, so his job is to deliver.
Well, he's the gold driver, the other two are bronze, so indeed that's the responsibility. Has he really ever had that responsibility? But he has on British GT because you've had a...
He was the gold in that with Rick Parfitt to win the championship, so he's been relied on for that. And again, he's a driver who, you know, he's been around for a good, 6-7 seasons or so out of Ginetta Junior Racing, but he's developing himself all the time, so he gets better and better season on season, and is going to be a man to watch this weekend. It'll be interesting when you get that car and the new generation of cars together on track.
Well, when you see the two cars together, you'll realise what a step forward second generation Bentley Continental GT3 is, and also, of course, the colour that the second generation car is in. This is the almost traditional, although it's not the green of M Sport, but very distinctive in the white bodywork. I mean, it's such a physically large car, but in spite of that, it's just one of the cars as we look inside Team Parker Racing's garage.
So Derek Pearce, I think, has done. Rob Smith is behind the wheel at the moment, and Seb Morris letting the AMs get the track time. See how crowded the pit lane is. It's going to be very, very busy when we get to pit stops. I know we're looking forward quite a long time, but just thinking about pit stops for the race, things have changed here as well. You don't have that range that you can't leave the pits between. It's now a standardised time, a bit like you see in British GT or Blancpain GT Series Asia. So pit in to pit out will be 70 seconds, and you can do what you want in that, driver, fuel and tyres.
Excellent.
Instead of having that...
Simplifying it.
Yeah, instead of having that range.
That delta time that we used to have in the past.
It was very confusing, Nicky Tim at the wheel of 76 Aston, and he's 10th fastest. This is the R Motorsport car of Mathieu Versivière, Jake Dennis and Nicky Tim, and he comes up towards the timing line now.
I remember being really, really impressed with Nicky Tim back at Spa, must have been 2016. And he did an unbelievable series of stints from early morning up until the race when the flag fell. And one of those drivers who never has quite managed to break through. I don't know why. He's always highly regarded, but I don't know, there's something that's seeming, I don't know what it is that's, I think, held him back. But I mean, that stint he did, or the series of stints he did, were really just awe-inspiring.
You're right, because he won the German Carrera Cup, he won Porsche Super Cup, and yet none of the DTM teams picked him up, and I think that frustrated him. And he then got a bit of a reputation as a wild child. He had the odd incident, and he was not great at responding to black flags and driving standards flags and things like that. So he's a bit cavalier. Maybe that fits easier with some teams than others.
There's the 63 Lamborghini we're seeing for the first time.
Might be right.
And this is the orange bonnet we saw, the orange bonnet on Mirko Bortolotti's and Christian Engelhardt's Lamborghini in Zolder. So just winning, there it is, well, it is Mirko Bortolotti, currently 38th quickest.
Okay.
That car actually has done 23 laps, so we've not actually really seen much of it. So
chipped away, hasn't it? It's got up the order, yeah.
So it's done, and it's currently the last lap, 1 minute 50.3. So Mirko Bortolotti, will he see any improvement? It's the Aston, the classic GT car, remaining, I would say, traditional V12 engine, and it's not hung desperately low on the chassis. It's just a really well-balanced front to rear package, maybe a bit further back in the chassis than you might have imagined. Bortolotti goes, let's see, he's going to cross the line. He hasn't come across the line yet. He's just going to cross the line into the pit lane.
So drivers getting themselves ready down at M Sport. So there will be a driver change imminently.
Look at the rear wing. I mean, the wing stays. It's like something off a Plymouth. Remember those NASCAR cars they had in the 60s?
Yeah. Barracudas.
They're massive aerodynamics. That wing is absolutely enormous.
GT3 cars push on, don't they? Progress every year. It makes the Audi almost look humble there coming into view.
Modest.
Modest, thank you, yes.
It is. I mean, certainly the Audi has been venerable in its services to the brand. Great reliability, huge success. But progress is marching on.
Welcome to Europe, Rick Yoon. He is a driver that we've seen for the last season and a bit in Blancpain GT Series Asia, and prior to that in the Audi R8 Cup, that's now grown to come and race in Europe and Australasia, but was always an Asian championship up until this season. So Rick Yoon is not inexperienced. He drives an Aston Martin in the Asian Championship. He was on duty in Sepang last week, and here he is with this Rinaldi Racing Ferrari.
Korea's got a history of motor racing, but how many, I'm not aware of many Korean drivers actually coming over to Europe. I mean, I'm sure there must have been, and certainly in some of the junior single-seater championships, no doubt there were.
But it's not a long list.
Not a long list.
Yeah. Rick Yoon is a banker by trade. Pierre Arret is a regular in this car, as we have seen, and then the third bronze driver is Rory Penton at the fin. So 22 minutes of free practice remain. Been a fascinating look at identifying different cars, different drivers, and yet relatively little has happened in terms of shuffling of times.
No, again, people are going through cycling, drivers giving them track time, just getting accustomed to a car, saving, going back to the old tyre issue, saving the tyres for when it really will make a difference and count. As we see the 63 car that briefly went into the pits back out on track. So Mirko Bortolotti has just completed an out lap, and hopefully we'll see, I would expect to see some further improvement, but again it will be literally, it'll be a tyre dependent time. Whoa, that was great looking.
Crikey.
Scary from the cockpit.
And that was Robin Frins, was it not? In the car that he shares with Sheldon van der Linde and Stuart Leonard.
A car that could be a winning car.
Yeah, a sleeper. I think that's going to get stronger and stronger as the race wears on. Sheldon van der Linde, the brother of Kelvin van der Linde, that's also in the entry. Stuart Leonard has proved himself very impressive, ever improving over the last couple of seasons. But you know, he was a pretty emotional winner at Zolder last year, first outright win, and then going on to win a championship. Great effort done. Robin Frins splitting his time of late between this and Formula E. Goes now down towards turn one.
Watch again. I mean, why would that have happened? I mean, it didn't look to be offline particularly.
No.
Maybe again, just simply that the tyre is just about at the limit of its useful life. So the onboard shot from the Audi coming through the chicane looked a lot worse actually, I think, from the outboard camera than it was from the onboard camera.
So with 20 minutes to go, there is Robin Frins through the second of the chicanes.
the reason that the 63 Lamborghini came in was to make a driver change. So Mirko Bortolotti, Andrea Caldarelli has gotten in. So that's the first time we've seen Caldarelli, I think, in the car so far. Just under 20 minutes to go on board with the 17 Audi.
I mean, that continuity of driver has got to help, because the team know what they're working with, the drivers know how they can deal with their co-drivers and what the relationship's going to be like. So they're just carrying on where they left off last year.
Pretty much. I mean, just a little bit late into that final chicane. The 63 car and the Grasso Racing Lamborghini Huracan team really, really impressed with the pace. Yeah. And they've also, in their pit stops, they had a slightly poorer pit stop, I think, in Zolder on one of the pit stops. But generally, it's such a slick operation these days. Having to wait a long time on the exit of Parabolica to get the power on. So Robin Frinn's just having to be patient and knows that not an awful lot he's going to be able to do. And Caldarelli, that last lap again, 150.9, way off the ultimate time that car is going to be capable of in qualifying. Runs up to the rear of the 63 Lamborghini. Is that a red flag to Robin Frinn's, or?
No, session's still green. Number 5, Black Falcon Mercedes through. Crichton Lendudi, Said Al Faisal and Rui Aguas. It was Rui Aguas at the start of the session, but then Al Faisal had an off, as we've seen. How's the 911 doing? Dirk Werner is still 20th as he comes down towards the Parabolica.
It's consistent. Yeah, not showing the pace that definitely it will do when we get into qualifying on Sunday morning.
Well, 8 tenths back. And Porsche, don't forget, was the car that won the very first 3-hour Blancpain endurance race here all those years ago. And that was on fuel saving, really. The car ran to a pace and only had to make 2 pit stops instead of, like many of them, a splash and dash at the end, or having to then suddenly back off at the end and limp round.
Yeah, and that it wasn't even a hybrid, was it?
No, proper good old-fashioned early GT3 car.
What you do is you lift and coast. You're braking into turn 1, might be 150 meters. What you do is you lift off at 200 meters, you let the car coast the first 50 or so meters, then you get your brakes on. And that's one way that it is easy to save certainly fuel. The other thing is slightly more complex now with these very sophisticated electronic ignitions and so on and so forth, but by simply just reducing, just was going to say, there's a reason why the Mercedes slowed down. There it is.
25 off the road.
And that's a bit of a surprise, because that was a car. Who's behind the wheel of that car right now?
I'm struggling to see it at the top 40. So the Santilot car is off, and that's going to give us a yellow flag. Is this where Alain Aldon, the race director, chooses to do a full course yellow as a test?
No, Christopher Haas was in that car, but we can see down timing and scoring, I think it's fallen off.
Yeah, it's dropped out of our top 40, which is all we have access to, I'm afraid. So there it sits, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get the FCY boards to neutralise this, because it's worth having a test so the drivers know how to respond should we get to one in the race. 24, we are told, has spun, but it looked like 25 to me.
We had a full course, or certainly a safety car intervention towards the end of the test. Oh, there we go. It just got rode the curb.
Getting a red flag, John,
sorry. A bit of bodywork came off as well. You're having to see this car coming out. There's a bit of something black just in the riding the curb. So it is a red flag. The session will be brought to a standstill. Car 24 spun, and that was. They're saying that was an Audi that spun.
Yeah,
it's not 24 is the Lamborghini.
Yeah. So red flag, but because this is free practice, the clock carries on ticking. So all of this eating into the 15 minutes available. And I think the decision is that because it's in a dangerous place, to get a flatbed there, to hoik it out of the way, that makes the circuit even more dangerous. So your only option really is to stop the session, remove it, and then maybe go again, but I would wonder how much time we're going to have left.
Well, if there's a vehicle, a snatch vehicle, convenient, and there should be one in that area down into the second chicane, or as it's probably better known, the Roger chicane, they could probably get it pulled away and tidied up within 5 minutes, which would give us roughly just under 10 minutes of the session remaining. how much there is to be left, to be gained by going back out. Undoubtedly, some people will want to use it because if it's there, they want to use it. But I would assume with the running that we had on Friday, now there's the best part of an hour and 15 or so minutes. Probably not everybody will make it back out of track.
Federico Leo's Lamborghini heads down the pit lane. And so really you need everybody to be off the track, or certainly through the incident zone, before you can dispatch a recovery vehicle. So the teams, there it is, yeah.
Well, that's no doubt come from around about the first chicane area, and then it'll make its way around what was the Curva Grande. Now it's known as Biesano. Much prefer Curva Grande.
Go along with that. So the red flag flies.
You know, the first time I raced at Monza was 1971. From memory, it was in Formula 2.
Yeah.
There weren't any chicanes. Just
flat out all the way.
Well, just about. I mean, in those days, you probably didn't run a wing, or you had such a tiny wing, and the car would have been really airy-fairy all around the Curva Grande. But even in Formula 1 in pre-71 Formula 1 cars, no chicane. Proper drivers, proper cars, no downforce.
Runoff? No gravel trap,
runoff,
no catch fence?
Nothing.
No.
Nothing.
Just don't make a mistake. Sharpened the wits, didn't it, that era?
Progress is, well, the outside of what was the Curva Grande is a different part of the racetrack. Of course, the cars are going very much more quickly than they used to do. Nevertheless, that's what you get with progress.
Yeah, true.
There's damage to the left rear of the car. Don't know whether that was done when he spun and hit the barrier on the inside, but certainly something detached from the rear of the car. Looked like bodywork, something black, bit of carbon fiber for sure. So they will lift this onto the back of the flatbed and do it so carefully because they've got to find the balance point so as it doesn't tip nose down or tail down and do any further damage. Well, 12.5 minutes remaining. So there will probably be about 8 minutes in the session. I suspect by the time the snatch vehicle gets it back to the pit lane, and it might need to get back into its position, which I assume is down at the chicane at the end of the pit straight. There we go, up she goes. As we look down into the pit lane, all the cars more or less parked in echelon, one or two not. As we look into the Attempto Racing's garage, there is the 66 car.
Was all the sprint winners at Attempto Racing.
The Schotthorst and Kelvin van der Linde. I mean, I've never seen a driver almost just beyond himself as Stein Schotthorst when they won the second race, or the Sunday race at Zolder. Just, I mean, on the interviews on the pit, or on the grid, he was ebullient, and it just only got better for him. So he's damaged
quite a lot of damage.
Yeah, there's a lot of damage on that right rear.
Is that a legacy of earlier contacts, or is that a breakage? But
I don't know. I think when he spun it, he must have managed to tail it into the barrier. Yeah. But that would have been, I'm not sure. It certainly came off the curbing. Would have been the left rear that snapped, and then it kind of rotated, and then that's. But I mean, look at it again. So watch and see. Rides the curb, and then it's just but something kicks up, and then the back of the car. It's the left rear that gets the damage. Actually, it almost went into another spin. So that's why the right rear was damaged, because the left rear managed to get out of harm's way. So back on the back of the truck, and is he going to reverse it back? He is indeed. Now where's he going to go?
Through one of the little access roads, I think.
Possibly there is a safe spot for the car behind the barrier at that second chicane, so it won't necessarily be brought straight back into the pit lane. It'll have to wait now until the session ends, and the team will have a reasonable amount of time before these cars will return to the track later in the afternoon.
What they might be able to do is bring it through the infield, because there are so many roads in the middle of the circuit. The fast lane is open, and so we'll be underway for just under 10 minutes as soon as race director Anna Adon wants the car out of harm's way. There it is, reversing through the little access gates, and now we go green. So pretty much on the 10-minute mark. The pit lane is open, but now, of course, you realise if you're at the back of the queue, you're going to lose a good 2 minutes getting out and another 2 minutes plus for an outlap. So your actual running time now is negligible.
It is, and if you are at the garage, the first garage into the pit lane, you just have to sit and be patient. And if more than, let's say, 30 or so cars go out, the track is going to be very busy, and to find clear track space to try and affect, a change or something that you want to get information from. So just maybe be patient, sit in the pit lane for a couple of minutes, let the throng, as they make their way down the pit lane, back onto the racetrack, down into turn one, just let them go out and sort it out amongst themselves.
So now you have a chance to have a look at all the different brands. Porsche through, Mercedes, and you've got Audi. And next to Aston Martin. You've got the BMW in the entry as well. The M6.
There's another Porsche.
Yeah. McLaren. Lamborghini, the 24 car, is Hans Reiter's car. So that's a Gallardo RX, R-E-X, it's pronounced X.
I was watching something on TV recently, and it involved Chris Harris in the 188 McLaren, talking about getting a permanent seat in a GT3 in a Pro-Am entry. And one of the things he was mentioning is, in his television work, he's required to get cars leery, sliding, almost like drifting.
Yeah, place for camera.
Yeah, for a TV show. Now he's got to sort of put another chip into the brain, which says you've got to drive the car, particularly a McLaren, which is not the easiest of all the cars in the field, to find that very narrow balance within which it works. So it'll be interesting to see how Chris manages here at Monza, if he can actually replace that chip.
Oh, he's no mean peddler. You see
he's a very good driver. Yeah,
he's good to given level, certainly. There, number 6, another of the Black Falcon squad of Mercedes, Gabriele Piana, the driver that moved himself from Italy to go live near the Nordschleife and learn about the circuit, the VLN, and he's an in-demand part of Black Falcon's team for long-distance races, certainly at the Nordschleife. It's good that we've got him back into the Blancpain series for this year. 7 minutes pretty much on the clock.
McLaren again just being outgunned down the straight into turn one. And that was a Ferrari that made the pass look pretty straightforward.
Indeed so.
I'm just going to have a look down the timing and scoring just to see. McLaren, yes, the Andrew Watson car 58, 271 kilometers per hour, a full 12 clicks slower than the quickest Lamborghini. The quickest Ferrari was 281. So 10 clicks down. That's 10 clicks more or less all the way down this long from the exit of Parabolica, which is a fast exit, all the way down into turn one.
It's a lot of time, isn't it?
It's something that's frustrating. You're sitting there, you're flat out, you're pushing the throttle pedal through the floor, through the throttle stop. You can't go any quicker.
So there's number 7, Bentley, which has dropped away a little bit in the times. It is Jules Gounon at the wheel of it, who was last year's ADAC GT Masters champion, as well as winning at Spa 24 Hours. So Gounon picked up by Bentley, and he's put straight away into number 7. So it's Guy Smith and Jules Gounon and Stephen Kane. That's quite an accolade to be put into the number 7 car, because that, unofficially at least, is always regarded as the lead car, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Jules Gounon, I think we saw him last year in the Yaka ASP Mercedes, and again I was impressed with what I was seeing. I thought there's talent that in the right seat in the right time is going to prosper, and that's why he's in that number 7 Bentley.
Still learning about the car, still learning about the team, and just to show you how competitive it is, Gounon has done an equal time to the car that he's classified beneath, which is the 89 Acura ASP Eric Debard Mercedes, but they're on identical times to the 1000th, 1 minute 50.218. Second and a half down on the top time in the session. 12 Lamborghinis, the Ombra racing car of Alex Frassinetti, Romain Monti and Andrea Rizzoli. Up to the timing line it comes, and that's another one with a bit of time to find, really. Gone through 25th now, that's an improvement.
Yeah, well, just watching what we've been watching for the best part of an hour and whatever, 25 or 6 minutes. I don't think there's anything that I've seen that really is going to give me any indication to what we might see possibly later this afternoon when we go into at 5 o'clock into the pre-qualifying session. It's another 1.5 hour session. Before then on Sunday morning at 9:45 for 1 hour qualifying.
No, it's absolutely wide open still, isn't it? And we always say this, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're surprised and it doesn't pan out, but with so many cars on track, an early safety car period can happen. You know, you've got that pinch point of the chicane. We never even got there last year before we had the dramas off the line. But even so, some years they've made it through, some years we've had problems. But 54 cars hammering down towards the first chicane, something might give.
Well, I think what we saw in Zolder, where the start, there was a more relaxed view to the start. The criteria was that everybody must stay effectively what would be their pit box as they came down to take the green light. But the front row cars were advised that they don't need to stick to the 80 miles or 80 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
That when they get to within a reasonable distance from where the lights, they can then go, which allows that stretch to occur. And then the kind of thing that we saw here 1 year ago when the field came down into parabolic, and I think I remember pointing it out, it was so compacted and it was so, you could feel the intensity of it. And then sadly we had this multiple car incident and took out about 7-8 cars before the race really had done 100 meters.
Guy Smith copped the rap last year for the incident, perhaps unfairly, because it wasn't, strictly speaking, all down to him, but then it was a problem exacerbated by the confusion over the penalty that then followed. Now, we saw Federico Leo pit a little while ago. There is the Nissan, which is 32nd fastest. This is number 22, Ricardo Sanchez at the wheel. He's another of the gamers. He's come up through the PlayStation Academy through Gran Turismo, so from couch to cockpit. And he shares this car, the early generation car, with Struan Moore and Jordan Witt. Jordan Witt, winner of the GT Cup, winner in International GT Open, and Struan Moore had a year with McLaren, then a year with Bob Neville at Nissan, and just gets better and better and better all the time. And he's somebody that Bob Neville speaks very highly of.
Yes, I mean, this is a car that has been superseded by the Evo 1, or whatever you wish to call the 23 car, and great place for, if you like to call it, the Pro-Am entry with Nissan to learn your trade. Struan Moore, somebody who, as you point out, is under people's observation. Go back up to this Irish chicane, 66, and she goes.
So a minute and 3/4 to go. Just to recap, Michael Bronizeski, who did not venture back out again after the red flag, is the fastest by 98 thousandths from the Yelmer Berman Black Falcon Mercedes. Third for Rinaldi Racing is the Dominic Schwager Ferrari. Dominic, regular in Japan in Formula Nippon. And then fourth fastest with what must be a Winkelhock time, Mark Rostan currently in the wheel. Here is 66 up to the line.
It's outside the top 40 from what I can see at the minute, and it stays 46.
Wow.
But the personal best in the middle sector. Now that is not representative of the drivers or that car or their ultimate pace. But I tell you what, I couldn't tell you now who will be the top 20.
No. And you've got two fascinations this year, for qualifying at least. One is who is going to be quick in terms of outright pace, but then this concept of adding them together and taking the average is another intriguing way of doing a grid, and that's going to give us something else to factor in.
Well, I think the only constant you can say will be that the pro cars are going to be the quickest cars. The Pro-Ams, and stop at the exit of the first coming out of Ferrari. Grande, yeah, Ferrari on the outside of the circuit, and that's mechanical, electronic.
We've only got 30 seconds to go, but I can imagine this being another red flag, couldn't you?
Not a comfortable place to be, but
red
not
flag.
A part of the racetrack that a racing car would ordinarily get to unless there was an issue, and that's the session concluded.
Yeah. So, with trying to identify which car it is, and actually saying it's a red Ferrari is less helpful than you think these days. The session will not be resumed, of course, because the time will ebb away before everyone gets to the pit lane. So free practice comes to an early end. Ferrari in question limps, but he's going nowhere, really. Oh, it's
a
not a Ferrari,
Lambo.
it's a Lamborghini. It's
Yeah.
the Writer Lamborghini 24, apologies.
And that's the Gallardo.
It is.
As opposed to the Huracan.
And that means that it is, at the wheel, Leonard Marionech. So, the first proper running that the teams have had ends a little earlier with this red flag. We will be back at 5 o'clock, give or take, when we have pre-qualifying at the end of the afternoon. But in the meantime, the drivers will make their way back into the pit lane. And this is how we look then at the end of free practice, with the Michael Broniszewski, Alessandro Pierguidi Ferrari topping the times from Jelmer Berman, Lukas Stoltz and Maro Engel. Another potential winning car, and that Renat Salikov, Alexander Matchel and Dominic Schwager's Ferrari third. Fifth quickest, impressive. It sort of sneaked up there. The Maxime Martin, Marvin Kirchhoff, Alex Brundle, Aston Martin. And a little bit further back, Seb Morris's car 31st. How did Straka get on? Well, 42, which was the Buncombe Leventis Lewis Williamson car, 16th. Bentley 8, 17th. Whereas the number 7 Bentley in the end was way back in 34th in the times. Salah Yoloch and Ewan Hankey 18th, ahead of the BMW from Rover, the Krohn Collard Klingman entry, and Adrian Tombe with Lucas Auer and David Fumanelli also to be found a little bit further back. They ended the session just at the bottom end of the top 20. Matt Parry 26th, to Lucas Ordonez and Alex Buncombe in the 23 new generation of Nissan. And in terms of the classes, Pro-Am Broniszewski overall class, it's the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes. But then have a little look further down, and fastest of the AMs, 24th, is 488, the Rick Yoon, Pierre Arret and Rory Penttinen Ferrari. And you can see how close the times are as well. We're talking fractions of a second. We've got some covered by 1,000th, and we have still got 33rd and 34th on identical times. Session stopped early because of the Leonard Marionech's Lamborghini stopping out on track, the team manager of which car has been summoned to the race director, and 51 cars venturing out doing a time for free practice. So let's have a look at the highlights of the session, which had a good 2-3 minutes of cars just pouring out onto the road. And out early on to try and get some clear track space was Maxime Soulet in the new Bentley, taking up attention as people saw the car in anger for the first time. It wasn't long though before overtaking was necessary, as the road became very crowded and everyone having to thread their way through the traffic. As 63, the winning car from last year, the Grasser Racing Team Lamborghini, had a very slow, very quiet, understated start to the session, drivers cycling through a programme. Some ran wide and explored all the outer reaches of Monza coming out of the Variante Ascari, including the ACA ASP Mercedes, although thankfully there were no dramas, the car got away with it. Number 4 Mercedes was another one pushing on, but Alessandro Pierguidi and Michael Broniszewski topping the times. Broniszewski doing the lap early on, as then off the road went Saud Al Faisal in the number 5 Black Falcon Mercedes, scrabbled his way back onto the circuit. So the drivers have had a chance to have a look at the track conditions. We have pre-qualifying later in the day. Robin Frins was spectacular as he hustled on in the Audi from WRT, and of course qualifying comes tomorrow morning. And we will be back at around about 5 o'clock for that pre-qualifying session, when the wick will be turned up even more for this opening endurance race of the season. We'll see you later. Bye for now.